Wow, it just cuts off. Did you
It
like that?
it was very abrupt. I was not ready for that. I'm glad that I was actually paying attention. So,
I will get
yeah.
better. I will get better. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for this Thrive O'Clock. My name is Melody McAllister, and of course, I'm here with the lovely Rochelle Danae Poth. And we're actually having a really important conversation that we kind of started talking about with Carl Hooker last week when we started talking about how, Twitter has been changing now that Elon Musk is the owner. And so we're continuing that conversation today with a panel of guests. And we're so glad that you're here, whether you're joining in live or watching the replay. And yeah, so Rochelle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic and looking forward to our conversation with our guests today, and especially about social media, just because with my students in eighth grade, the STEAM course, we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, like artificial intelligence and machine learning and social media and algorithms and all these different things. And so a large part of the conversation has been about Elon Musk as well, because they have curiosities and questions, and then just connecting that with social media. So I'm looking forward to it, but everything is good.
Yeah, and we were talking before the show. It's always really good whether we stay on Twitter. Today we're talking about to tweet or not to tweet. That is the question. And it's always really good to kind of reevaluate your social media presence anyway. And I want to give out a special shout out to Dr. Sarah Thomas. She is going to join us. She wasn't able to join us like on our panel, but she's going to be talking with us. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Sarah. And before we bring on our first guest to the panel, Rochelle, what can you share why you were on Twitter in the first place, or what brought you to Twitter?
Yes, but first I'm going to give a shout out to my dad, Jim, for being all about the news and being a great research assistant. So just going to put that out there. My social media usage, it's if anybody goes back and looks at a series of blogs I had written probably 5 or 6 years ago, I guess it was like, and I was so wrong about Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and Voxer and all of these things, because I never saw the value in social media. Everybody had a Facebook account, and I was like, that why do I need that? And then I had to plan a high school reunion for 600 people, and I was trying to find people in the phone book, and they're like, what are you thinking? Like, you're not going to find me in the phone book. And so that opened up so many connections to reconnect with people from like childhood all the way through college and just family. And then it wasn't until I think 2014, I was at a technology summit in Pennsylvania, and somebody posted a tweet and I had to create an account. And from then on, that's when I started to become more connected. And I remember going to ISTE on the train, doing my first like no, it wasn't Teach Like a Pirate. It was Sat Chat WC, so Sat Chat West Coast. And I was just amazed at like the power of connecting and learning through that space wherever you were. And so that's why I got involved in Twitter, and still didn't really understand it. Like, first Twitter chat I joined in was with teachers in Tennessee, and they're like, what part of Tennessee are you from? Like, I'm from Pittsburgh. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I just kind of fell into it. But then I formed connections with like Katrina Adkins and Sean and some other people too. And it's just continued to grow since then. And I think about the opportunities that we can have for ourselves, our own personal and professional learning, but also we can bring in for our students through this space. And so I really value what I've learned from it. And so I was wrong about it to begin with, but I'm glad that I took that leap into this space. So that's my story. What's yours?
Yeah, and I love that, and I love that like it has changed over the time. When we first got on social media, it really did kind of rock our world. We've learned so much in the last 15 years. I was kind of forced to be on Twitter in my school district, my previous school district. The expectation was to be very techy, to be, we had our own district Twitter chats. And I mean, it wasn't really a forced issue, but it was highly recommended. And I did resist at first because I was one of those people that would take off Facebook. I would deactivate my account for months or years at a time because I knew that I needed, healthy wise to stay off of social media.
Yeah.
But actually, I got onto Twitter in 2015 under the recommendations of a lot of our district leaders, and it really did change the way that I felt about teaching. I had a real, like Dr. Sarah talks about, a PLF for the
Yeah.
first time. And I saw that there were a lot of educators that were similar to how I was teaching and really getting into doing things that weren't status quo. And actually it became kind of status quo for all of us, but it was,
Right.
you know, at the time, you know, a lot of risk taking, good risk taking. And so my social media presence on Twitter has grown over the years. I actually have preferred Twitter to a lot of the other social platforms because I felt like I could control what I was seeing. And, you know, I have kept it for mostly professional things and
Me too.
learning. And honestly, I wouldn't be here talking with you right now, Rochelle,
No,
if I
I
hadn't
know.
joined Twitter or any
Yeah,
of our
I know.
panelists. And so I love that we're talking about this today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up everybody.
Okay.
And I just want to say, Dr. Sarah, I totally understand why you couldn't
Yeah.
be on here, but I'm grateful. We are all grateful that you are here. So
Yeah.
the first person I want to, and if you're watching and you want to explain while you're on Twitter or what brought you to Twitter, feel free
Drop it
to.
in the chat.
Yes.
Drop it in the comments. And you know, Mel, one thing I wanted to say too about you mentioned about like for teaching, and a lot of schools do encourage teachers, and actually even like pre-service teachers and teacher education are having them jump in. Like I see so many more joining in like formative chat on Mondays, and they got their own hashtag and everything, and showing them the value of being connected and why that matters so much. And it's just been nice to see. And I think that's an essential component to find a way to connect with people. And it may not be Twitter, it may be some other form of social media, but you're right, that component about being able to kind of control like your activity on it, what chats you get into, what hashtags you follow. So yep, looking forward to seeing what everybody has to say.
And our first guest is coming in live, and this is crazy. Oh my goodness. John Carippo, where are you?
I'm in right in the middle of Twitter's cybersecurity offices. They just let me walk in. There was nobody at the door, and this is what it looks like when you have no filter.
So is that your new office? You just, because nobody's going to monitor you, you just got like space for everything.
Yeah, I got a really cool slot car set coming. So I just Amazoned it. It's
Have you
huge.
seen Elon Musk?
No, he's just extraordinarily elusive. I think he's in the penthouse, though, doing something not to do with business, but making money off of it. So I'm kind of jealous of him for that kind of stuff.
Well, John, it is so great for you to be here. And actually, when I saw your tweet, we had been talking about it with Carl Hooker last Friday, but then I saw your tweet, and I'm actually going to drop that in the comments. And you are actually letting your followers know that you might not be on Twitter for very much longer. So tell us a little bit about like what brought you and, you know, what brought you here in the first place.
I can tell you exactly what brought me. My coworker, Brian Kerwick, said, you need to make a Twitter account. And I was like, okay. And a fun fact, if you look up at John Carippo, there's exactly one tweet from me that says, I'm enjoying Spring Q. And then I lost my password. So people tweet they tag at John Carippo all the time. And I'm like, that's not me, bro. So 2008, I started. And I was listening to you guys on the startup. And for me, it started where I made that first one. I lost the password. And then I start going to these events and people are like saying, check out the event hashtag. So I really started on Twitter as a retweeter. Like I just retweeted stuff that I liked. I really wasn't making anything. And then what happened was Andrew Schwab, Will Kimbley, Chris Scott, my OG folks, we would show up at events and we're like, oh my God, you're the real guy. So we started, then we started making personal relationships, and like my PLF started just growing and growing. And then the other fun thing about the early days of Twitter for me was that Monday through Friday, it was like, here's how I'm using this cool new tool, and here's what I'm doing with this cool tool, and here's why you should, get your Google Innovator and all that kind of stuff. And then at about 4:00 on Friday, it turned into, this is what I'm eating right now. And and oh yeah, that's what I'm eating right now. So it was really fun people wise. So we started connecting over other things, which is way down the road. 14 years later has led to hashtag EduMeet. And we've got a whole bunch of people. Hi, Sarah. And we've got a whole bunch of people that now chat about other things besides just education.
When I first saw EduMeet, I thought it was a joke, but it is a true thing.
It is.
Dr. Sarah says
Don't
she
make
was
me
at a
crazy.
was at a conference
I'm
with the
working on
hashtag,
my
and she didn't want to use her personal account, so she made a semi-professional one. And of course, she's an amazing leader on Twitter.
Well,
thank you, John.
Quick thought on that, though. For any young teachers or people that work with young teachers, I want to say this whole personal other account, that does not work. If you're a college football coach, you don't get to have a secret life. If you're a youth pastor, You don't get to have a secret life. You can't be a youth pastor and then be like, check us out in Cabo. You don't get to do that. So you need to understand that to be a professional educator, you are modeling to your students for the rest of your life. And check
That's
it out,
true.
you guys. I went back to the classroom 2 years ago. I told my sixth graders, I'm going to be at your weddings. And they're like, what? I said, I might perform your wedding. I performed 3 of my former students' weddings.
Wow.
And I'm not a minister. I'm not a minister. They made me pay $39.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Someday, 14 years from now, you're going to come around the corner of your car at Target, and I'm going to be right there. Hey, what's up? And I'm going to meet your kids. And so the thing is, when you sign up to be a teacher, your social impact is for the rest of your life. You owe those kids to be a good model for the rest of your life.
Right.
And if you don't want to buy into that, I'm not sure this is the right profession for you. I'm not sure that you can just have kids for 180 days and then just kind of, just like chop them off and say you're done. So I told my kids, look, I'm going to treat you guys all year like a 20-year relationship, a 30-year relationship, because a good chance in 15 years, one of you will call me about buying a house or which MacBook they should buy.
Yep.
And that's what happens when you spend 180 days with people.
Boom. You're in it for the long haul.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off, but we're going to talk
You're
a lot
not.
more. I do want to bring up our next guest, Miss Susie Brooks. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. And tell us, what brought you to Twitter?
It was funny. I'm glad John went first. It gave me time to think about it. It was also February of it was February 2008, and it was I was 2 feet in, like jumping in. I don't even remember if someone told me to. It was probably a webinar. It was probably a conference. I'm not sure. I was a classroom teacher at the time, and I was also teaching workshops to teachers. So to me, it was a great way to expand my network, to keep in touch with people I was meeting, to be able to model to my students how you can have a persona online that's appropriate and relevant and genuine. And I've always had the same Twitter account. I've never veered from that. Once in a while, I might talk about Survivor and, geez, I didn't like the way that ended. But for the most part, I've used it for education. But I'm a real person, so there's some real people stuff in there as well. I loved the Twitter chats. Jerry Blumengarden, I love him.
He's amazing. He always, I don't know how he shows up all the time. He's actually from Pittsburgh. Cyber Man, yeah.
You're right. But he also lived in Mashpee, which is the town I teach in, for a number of years. So whenever he comes into town, I get to meet him. And so we became fast friends on Twitter. And so then that relationship continued as well. And now he's stopped his Cybraryman website, but it lives on in perpetuity. Thank you.
Yes, English teacher.
Sorry. Thank you.
And that reminded me of something Steve Denbo said once when we were doing a thing in Mexico, and I think his Twitter handle's @Teach42.
It is.
And he said, social media allows us to have constant light touches. So in the old days, we would write person three-page letter, right? But with social media, I can just see slices of what's going on, and those allow me to assemble a manifestation of where they're going professionally, personally. And I always like that phrasing, constant light touches.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so, I loved the Ed Chat back in the day. There were so many chats I got involved in, met so many people. And then when you'd go to larger conferences, it would be like, oh my gosh, I know you on Twitter. And that was always exciting. Where I would say for the last few years, it's kind of flipped for me. It's become more of an echo chamber. It's harder to make those meaningful connections. To me, it's been more like, what's your Twitter so I can find you later? Not, hey, I met you on Twitter and now that's so cool. So I have felt a change in it. Maybe because it's so big now.
I agree.
I'm not sure.
If you look at it as a pie, what I'm seeing is a lot of our younger teachers, they're hard on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, they're not on Twitter. No.
Or Instagram.
Nope, not Instagram.
And
TikTok
Twitter
is
is kind of morphing to like almost a Jedi council, because most of the people that I interact with on Twitter have been in it for the long run, and they're deep, highly skilled practitioners. I don't see a lot of newbies on Twitter.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to start building my visibility on the TikTok side, because I think at our relative ages, our job is to help the young people. So we can't just be where we want to be. We got to be where they are.
That's
You're
a good
right.
point.
Yeah, my daughter, who's a fourth year teacher, said we don't have the attention span for Twitter, so that's why we're on TikTok. She goes, I
Yeah.
could spend time on Twitter, but if I need to find out how to do this or do that,
Zoom.
I can have it
Yep.
in 2 minutes.
Right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Mom.
Yes.
My daughter did the same thing to my wife. She's like, you could learn this really quick on YouTube. And my daughters are like, why would I watch a 5-minute YouTube
Right.
when I'm watching
You
8
can pull
second
up TikTok.
Yep.
Oh my
Right.
gosh. Yeah, but
Yep.
you can lose a lot of time when you sit down and you
Oh, yeah.
realize like 2 hours goes by on TikTok. But
Yeah,
there's so
doom
much
scrolling
value.
is a thing.
It is.
Mhm.
It is.
All
yeah.
right, guys, I'm going to bring up our next guest to answer the question. Mr. John Walter, would you tell us what brought you to Twitter?
Yeah, thank you all for having me. And my introduction to Twitter is really kind of interesting. The first time I had ever heard of Twitter was probably in the fall of 2008 during my freshman year of college. I was at a Wiz Khalifa concert, the rapper Wiz Khalifa. And like, this is way before he got famous. There might have been 50 people. I don't know how I was a fan at that time, but nobody really knew who this guy was. And at this concert, he was talking about, like, I want to connect with my fans, follow me on Twitter. And at that time, like, Twitter was really rudimentary. I didn't know, like, I didn't have a bunch of friends that were on Twitter. It wasn't like widely popular. It was still like rudimentary, and that like it was just all text, like at username.
It was very Wild West.
Yeah, retweets were manual. You had to copy and paste the tweet.
I actually remember not liking. I remember not liking when they went to 280 characters because I thought part of the beauty was you had to crystallize your thoughts.
Right.
Yeah,
Makes
very
it concise.
I've gotten comfy with 280, but I'm still more
Me
of a
too.
140 guy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was 2008. And as I was going through my undergraduate, like teaching preparation, about 2010 is when I got into my first educational technology course, refreshed, kind of like, here are all of the things that teachers are doing. I was like, oh, like, yeah, I remember Twitter. It had, the user experience had kind of evolved. And my background is in high school journalism, so like media education. So I was super stoked on all of the possibilities for creating media, project-based learning, putting things out there for the world, for real world audiences with Twitter. So in my, like pre-service education, that class, I was like, oh, I'm going all in on Twitter. Like, this is a really cool opportunity to be able to connect with people. And that was super important for like my pre-service education because there, I've in my entire like teacher ed prep program might have been like 180 students in like my year going through. I was the only person that said, I want to be the high school newspaper yearbook broadcasting teacher. So while everybody was talking about like, their English courses, I was in those classes, but nobody was really like thinking about lesson planning projects the same way that I was. So I got really involved in Twitter chat, specifically the JERD chat that happened, I think, on Thursdays, where I was able to connect with other educators who were using Twitter to be able to share resources. And so I didn't feel as much like I was on my own island trying to figure this out as a pre-service educator in college. And then it was incredibly useful for my first several years, especially like at the high school level, being the only high school journalism teacher. There was nobody to really kind of turn to for some of those specific questions. So that professional learning network and the connections that I was able to make through Twitter was just incredibly valuable to somebody who, like felt like they were on their own island at, a relatively large school trying to figure out all of these content pieces. And thankfully, the school I worked at had lots of opportunity for professional development. So I got to travel to conferences and meet all of these people. It's like, oh, my first time at the National High School Journalism Convention, like I'm going to be there. Can I connect with you and you that I've met on Twitter to be able to learn the ropes as a new teacher on kind of like attending conferences and, I want to bring students next year. How do I plan to bring students? And all of those kind of connections and useful advice super early in my career, like all has to do with Twitter. So it was a really good experience for me as pre-service early educator.
And John,
love
to your
that.
point, like I tell young teachers now, if you don't have 4 friends that are teachers in other states at your grade level, you're totally doing this wrong.
Yeah.
Because what we do in school is we tend to only commiserate with our own district. And so when things like in Missouri, they only go 163 days. In Michigan, school is illegal between Labor Day and Memorial Day. That the New York test scores are higher than California because they chose the lowest possible passing score. You learn those things from the hive mind. You don't learn them from reading blogs, and that
Right.
gives teachers a dramatically stronger professional footprint, not just pedagogy. But you can say, dude, I've got a friend named Susie. She says that's not true in New Jersey. Why is it true here?
Yeah.
And so that breadth
Mhm.
of hive mind is incredibly powerful.
Right. Thank you for sharing it. I'm going to be the one that's going to get us to keep going. People, that's yes. And our last panelist, Andrea, I'm so glad you came.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's good that you are here. And oh, we can't hear you, Andrea. Oh,
Okay, there we
there
go.
you go.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Andrea.
So
How's
glad you're
everybody?
here. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to Twitter. And I really wanted to bring you on because you're like all over the socials. Like we'll talk about that soon. But yeah.
Well, what brought me to Twitter, there was a woman that I met at a conference. It was one of the Future Ready conferences. She told me about this whole world of teachers everywhere. Sarah! So I was like, oh my gosh, okay, great. So I get on, and one of the first people that I followed was Sarah Thomas.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow.
Excellent move.
Yep.
Excellent
Oh
move.
my gosh.
Good call.
You know, I
Brilliant
was-
educator,
okay, so-
entrepreneur,
Yes.
awesome friend. Yes,
And
I'll
this
take
is
that.
like at the beginning of the EduMatch books. So she was
Yeah.
doing like the cookbook, and so I was just like, oh my gosh. Then I went to ISTE for the first time at 17, and she was like, come to our spaghetti thing, and I'm like, but no, you don't understand. I fangirl you. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm invited for real. I can come. So I met it just changed my whole life because I met everybody that was doing the type of work that I was doing, and I had found my tribe finally. And I'm
Yay,
like,
Sarah,
my
Sarah.
God. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's good to say anymore. Jesus.
Oh, did she
Wow,
move out of
you
Sarah,
can-
Sarah? Did I miss that?
No, she's Sarah.
Thomas is amazing.
Okay.
If,
okay.
if Dr.
okay.
Sarah Thomas changed your life, raise your hand. I can honestly say she changed my life. So
And
that
you
is
know-
awesome.
That
Yes.
that spaghetti dinner was like, I think for a lot of people was the first time they connected with somebody that they had met on Twitter, and of course through EduMatch. And for me, that was a big, branching point, or leaving, I don't even know what you want to call it, but just all the people to see them in that same space and brought together by Dr. Sarah Thomas in that community, which of course is still thriving. And it's
Yes.
amazing how many people we know because of the EduMatch. And then when you go to places like different conferences, wherever they are, no matter how big or how small, and you have that connection, you're like, I know you through EduMatch. And even if you're going alone, chances are you're going to find somebody there who has been connected and is part of that family. So there are a lot of benefits to that, especially for younger teachers who, I mean, for me, goodness, goes back, we didn't have the teacher education programs that they have now, that kind of, you need to be part of a network, and you have to say what network you're part of or actively be involved in a chat, whether or not you like it, but it's just to show you the value of doing that and whatever that space is.
Absolutely. I can remember going around with my phone going,
Is this you?
So one
it was
comment-
just amazing.
I was going to say one common thing is that Twitter, for our age group and our relative age group, I know that we kind of span, a little bit of there, but like it brought us together. We are who we are. I mean, Twitter, Twitter was good for me. It still is so far good for me.
Mhm.
But let's move on a little bit. If you're okay with that, what are some changes that you're noticing that you don't like?
Well, I got to go in a minute because I got
Right.
this session I'm doing. So I'll throw a couple more nuggets out there, and then you guys can have at it for the last bit. But for me right now, I'm not leaving Twitter, but what I'm seeing in the news makes me wonder how long, or if the filter comes off and it's a place of either hate or misinformation. Here's a fun, mind-blowing fact for anybody that's listening. The numbers are different depending on how they count it. Teaching, K-12 teaching, is something like the 6th most common job in the United States. So when you start talking about all of us that are connected, that's a pretty big chunk of leverage.
Right.
And I think if Twitter starts to become a place where hate is okay, and treating people badly is okay, I feel like that at some point we say, hey, we're moving. At some point is the key, because I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I also feel a responsibility that if it's a place where it feels like it's going, if that happens, I think as educators, we have, just like I was saying earlier with our kids, we have a responsibility to say, hey, it was good, but I have Facebook too, and I have TikTok too, and I have Instagram. I'm not having any problems like this on Instagram. I'm still hanging out with my friends. And like we have a Facebook group for Edu Protocols. We have 7,000 teachers in it in a year, you guys. And so in some ways it's more intensely personal because it's just us in a private group. And then like I was saying earlier on the TikTok side, I'm able to interact with millions and millions of younger teachers. So that's kind of my just wrap up thoughts. But my big takeaway is I think there are a lot of us in education, and I don't want to feed the beast if that's where it's going. Does that make sense? Am I saying that
Yeah.
okay?
It does. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love it. And thank you for being here, and, stay as long as you can. We really appreciate it. I know that, Twitter really needs you right now, the empty offices, the clearing out of everything.
Yes.
So
Keep us
Literally
updated, John.
nobody's working right now.
Go to
So
the
I'm
next
gonna-
floor.
I'm going next floor. That's why I got to punch out.
right. But those of you on the panel, like, what are you seeing anything right now that you're not liking? Has it changed much for you? What are your thoughts? And
For
just go ahead and
me-
speak.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just say for me, I think like the 2016 political election, like this is all just a continuation of like a change in discourse and all of that. And the rhetoric and like the hot takes and stuff like that, I've significantly like dialed my Twitter usage back in terms of like, I'm not putting as much out there. I'm retweeting some shared sources, but just like a lot of like that political rhetoric that is coming from all sides, like I mentally like isn't good for me. So really dialing that back and trying to be specific about who I'm following and who I'm engaging with, and really trying to keep my focus like narrow into the topics that are most useful for me, like professionally. So I don't know that like recently if I've seen things get worse, but I don't necessarily see them getting better in the future either.
Yeah, and just you gave me one quick thought, John, which is my Twitter feed is very curated. I don't see stuff from LeBron. I don't see stuff from Steph Curry. I don't see political. I haven't seen an F-bomb in my Twitter feed in 6 years. Okay,
Obviously,
it's
don't follow me.
Yeah.
No, I got the DMs.
That's
I got
true.
the DMs. But
That
my
was good,
Twitter
bro.
feed is very curated. So for anybody who's listening and going, wow, my Twitter feed's not like that, you got to go unfollow a bunch of those things, and you got to be really careful, because you can get your Twitter feed where it's 99% educational. So if you do stay, you can do that. What happens is when you sign up for a Twitter account, it says, do you like this? Do you like do that? And they start shoving that into your feed. So I always hit skip on that window. I'm skipping. So, okay, you guys, I'm going to bounce. Thanks so much, everybody. I love the energy. I love the thoughtfulness. Bye, Sarah. Sarah, I miss you. And maybe I can go to the spaghetti dinner next time. I must have missed the tweet last time.
Me too. I wasn't invited, but for sure. But we love you. Yes. Thank you, John.
Bye,
Have a
John.
great
That's
time wherever you are.
Hey,
Thank you.
Mel, I went before, and I know Susie was going to say something too, but I just want, because there was a comment that Dr. Sarah had said there was a lot more trolling. And the one thing, like, I've noticed in my feed, and I don't know if it's possible because it's like on my phone versus on my computer, but like when I open up Twitter in the morning or whatever part throughout the day, I don't recognize anybody in my whole feed. I have no idea who these people are. I'm not following them, but it's just like this continuous strand of I'm not sure what. Now, it's not like that when I'm on my computer, but it's just the strangest thing. And then I'm also getting tons, I don't know about all of you, but tons of messages every single day. And, DMs, private DMs that are, message requests and just asking for different things. And I mean, we can control that because we can delete or block it, or if it's something, you can report it. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens now with all of these people who now don't have jobs in the machine learning department and the engineering at Twitter, when it comes to, like John had mentioned too, about like, hate speech or like fake news and all of those things. So I don't know. That's what I've been noticing, especially in the last couple of weeks. So I don't know, Susie, I know you were going to say something before as well.
I had my thing on mute too.
That's okay.
for me, it's been a couple of years, and there's so many distractions on the mainstream social media channels, not just Twitter, but Twitter's a great example of that. It's not the same as it was when there were fewer users. It's harder for me to find those meaningful connections or to have those conversations that are going to change my practice or those of my teachers, because that's really my role. I'm finding Twitter to be a better billboard to send you to something else, that's where we're going to have the meaningful conversation or read a meaningful article. I'm not finding that back and forth connection availability on Twitter or Facebook. I go on Facebook, I get distracted. I go on Twitter, I get distracted. I go on Instagram, I get distracted. I have not joined TikTok yet because I know I will. So I've been yes, I will. My daughter tries. So I've been pouring my energy into K12leaders.com, which is,
Great
for
group.
a little over a year. Yeah, it's for educators, by educators. There are no algorithms in the background trying to figure out what to feed you or what you're doing or what you're pausing on, what you're clicking on, who you're connected with. And it's supposed to be pulling people from all corners of the schoolhouse, everything from food service workers to not utilities, but people who are working in the building, to leadership, to new teachers, retired teachers, even substitute teachers, to have that bigger conversation. So I don't have to go to one group to talk about this and another site to go to talk about that, or meet people at a tech conference and then never see them again because I met them on Twitter. Or we're finding that now on K-12 Leaders, we know that everyone in there has a stake in education. We're not a data company, we're a connection company. We keep saying we're using human intelligence instead of artificial intelligence to be able to make those connections. Because right now it's such a hard time in education that we're all looking for solutions and strategies and support. And that's hard to find on a regular, meaningful basis on all of the other platforms. And that's what we're trying to build at K-12 Leaders. And it's so exciting because we're almost at 1,000 members, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we're ahead of where LinkedIn was their first year. And we also don't have that same we don't have that same level of like the toxic vendors coming in to say, hey, do you want to buy this? Do you want to see this? Where we're trying to build that availability for, we call them solution providers, to learn more about education so that they can better serve us and we can explain to them what our reality is instead of those constant streams of ads and emails and IMs saying, hey, do you have 10 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes? Which I don't have 10 minutes. So I think that's what we're trying to build right now, is that environment where those conversations can happen and the conversation can continue. And we're super excited about it. So it feels more natural. It feels like we're with our people when we are in K-12 Leaders right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. And I just signed up today, and it's just so easy. And it does feel like kind of like a Facebook just for educators. I want to direct this to Andrea because she was kind of on my mind too, because Andrea, you're on Clubhouse, you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, Andrea. I'm just curious, what are your favorite alternatives to Twitter?
I'm going to answer that in just a second because I got to go back to the other one really quickly.
Yes.
In regards to the changes at Twitter, I don't think that Twitter has changed, at least for me, as much because of my curated list. But I've changed, so I'm not on it a lot. Awesome. I spend most of my time in regards to social media now on TikTok. My kids got me in this Be Real thing. I'm not understanding it yet. I'm still trying to find my way.
Always something.
Because I realize, that it's always going to be something, and it's really good to get ahead of it so that you can integrate it into education, because evidently the kids have moved on. I mean, they're not even TikToking anymore. And then the things that's going on with TikTok about your data, it got me a little nervous as well. But right now, I just go with what feels good for me. The only thing I really do on Twitter now is our company. We have a Twitter Spaces that's ran every month by Jenna Lee. And then I try to do hip hop ed, and I've struggled even getting into that. And that was something that I don't care what was going on. The family's not eating tonight. I got to do my 6 o'clock hip hop head, but I haven't even been doing it. That is
That's
nuts.
awesome.
You know what I mean? I think that I don't know where it's going, but it's slow. And we're at a microwave minute that we have to have now. So everything is pretty quick now. So I'm looking for something where I can watch it in 10 seconds and be done.
Yeah.
Which can turn into 10 hours on TikTok. But it's still, anyway, that's what I got there. Now back to the next question. I guess you answered it.
And I don't mean, and here's the thing. I want to respect everybody's time. So I know it's like Melody, she's butting in again. I just want to make sure that we get like some of your thoughts. And I really do respect your social media presence, Andrea. So so thank you for answering that. Dr. Sarah says her favorite alternative is still Voxer. Who's on Voxer?
I'm on Voxer. Love the Voxer. Not as much as I used to be, but yeah.
I forgot about that one. That was a good one.
But that was
I
one
don't
that
know who
connected
said
people
this.
too.
But they haven't seen any changes. Their followers are up a bit. And I just want to say this, like for me, it's kind of hard to leave Twitter. Just to be honest with you, I have more followers on Twitter than I have on any of my other social media channels. And I actually really respect, like, I feel like I've organically grown my followers over the years, and to leave them all behind, even though they probably don't think about me, like, before they go to bed or anything like that. It's just, I still think like, but these are my people, and there may be 6,000, but I literally go through every night and I try to acknowledge somebody that's on my list that maybe I haven't seen before. I really do try to amplify those people. If they're in my circle, I do want to get to know them, or I love it when I go to a conference and we're already following each other. Like, oh my God, I'm following, that happens quite a bit. So, but I love it. Twitter. So I'm kind of on the fence about everything for sure. But does anybody have any other alternatives that K-12 is amazing, that you're really getting into, just that other people can meet and talk about education stuff, collaboration?
The Transcend Design Community Slack channel is something that I've been involved with kind of over the last year that I've gotten some value from. Other things that I'm seeing are like a lot of the people who are interested in like Web3 or Ed3 and kind of what the future space of that might be. There are a ton of different Discords for people working on different projects. So I don't participate as much. I lurk on some of those when I have the time, just because I'm trying to learn and kind of see how people are envisioning what that future might be. I think those are the two that come to mind.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's okay. Go ahead. Oop, did I just freeze?
I think I may have lost you. I apologize. I just wanted to piggyback really quickly on what John said in regards to Transcend. I don't know if you all are familiar, but and it's all free, and it's all just helping each other. There's no sales. There's even jobs on there as well. So it's something that you all can, it's great. Anyway.
Yeah.
But so it's funny that you say that. That's what I was going to say, is that if you're doing anything during the school day in your job and you're on any of these sites, if Susie's on Facebook, she must be talking to her family or her high school friends. If she's on LinkedIn, she must be looking for a job. Like if they see me, and I just took a 1-hour webinar SEL thing on Facebook recently. So my computer history, they do any search, then they're going to see I was on Facebook for an hour, which is frowned upon in many establishments. So I think also having a place that's a respectable, you can be like, yes, I was on K-12 Leaders for 3 hours over the course of a month because I was looking for this for my teachers, or this for my students, or this for an upcoming professional learning opportunity. So that's the other thing too. A lot of these have stigma. Like I'm using Discord for a course I'm taking right now, but I'm like typing Discord into my computer knowing our kids can't do it, but it's okay if Mrs. Brooks does. It's interesting how you access that around the clock.
Right.
Yeah. And
I love that.
Oh, sorry, Mel.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Dr. Harvey had dropped in about the Ed3 DAO. And for anybody that doesn't know, you should check that out, because for educators that are looking to learn about Web3 and what that means for education in the future, they actually have a conference coming up November 11th to 13th. And, but they do have a whole community of which it's on Discord, and just like using Slack. I know, John, you mentioned Slack. That was another one that I didn't want. I'm like, another thing? What do you mean? And all the noises, and you're on a conference or something with somebody, and you hear that little, it's like the rattling sound. You're like, oh, there comes a Slack message. But it's just another space. And I think for some teachers, I think Twitter has become probably more like of an easy place to do because you can streamline it. And if you just want to watch like ed chat as a hashtag, or you want to do one chat per week, it's not as overwhelming as some of the other spaces can be. Like if you're in Slack or something, you're like, oh my gosh, like it says unread message, where is that? But like I can't find it.
I
But it
also
is
struggle
nice.
with Slack. Thank you. I feel very seen.
You get
Rochelle.
better. You get better at it, but it's a great space. So I think the key is like you have to find what works for you. And it might be Twitter, and maybe you start to see things that change now because of these recent turn of events with Twitter, with Elon Musk, and who knows? But I think at the end of the day, like if the reason that you got on for it, if you are still able to do and connect in the same way, and like that was your purpose, and it's not changing and impacting you in a negative way, then I'm thinking that people are going to continue using it because like they don't see the change. But I could see why some people might decide to not, because depending on your feed, if you have things popping up, because now we don't have machine learning people working there because John just cleared out the office. And now he's on the 7th floor. But I don't know. It's just, I'm thankful for the space that and the connections that I've made through that and will continue to make through that. And I don't personally plan to leave Twitter just because like you, Mel, that's my biggest base is on Twitter, and it has led me to other networks and so forth, and so much information that without that, like I would just be teaching like myself and not knowing about places like John mentioned, different states where things happen that are different than what my experience is.
Oh, it's
Laura.
Laura. I know. I
Laura.
get very lost in Slack too. I love that you guys are saying this. I don't.
I'm
feel
glad
so
she
alone.
said it was Laura, otherwise she was Facebook user.
Yeah. Dr. Sarah says, I will likely stay for the time being. I leave as default. Only people I follow can reply. I love that. I think that's a great way to not be trolled because of all the trolling, but we'll see what happens. And I also love what John Corripo said earlier, just like, if it does become something that we can't, like it's overcome with a lot of evil and toxicity. I mean, more so than it is at this point, like, I think, power in numbers, if we do leave, it will definitely be noticed. And there's a lot of groups besides teachers that, are questioning as well. Like, are they staying? But we are getting really close to our time to say goodbye, and I really try to respect everybody's time. Susie, Andrea, John, are you leaving, staying? You're not knowing? Let us know before we say goodbye.
I'm staying for the time being, and because I still think there's value. The user experience is still, relatively the same. If that starts to change, I'm gonna leave. And like one of the things, like the world moves fast. Like the predominant social media in my area was MySpace, and like that's gone. All of the content's gone. My first blogging experience, Zanga, that's no longer a thing.
Oh my gosh.
Like Twitter could go away, and there will be some new innovative platform,
Right.
K-12 leaders that steps in that really, like meets the needs of educators. So
Yes, it does.
if things change, that's not the end of community and like the way that we're able to connect on the internet. That just means that there will be a new innovation that we'll be able to link up on that will have even better features.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. What about you, Andrea?
I'm staying. The connections I've made there have been amazing. I really don't have a reason to leave. However, I just wonder what a world would be like when we look at the Web3 space, if it was something to where we owned it. And maybe that's something we need to talk to Michael Cohen about, about actually owning the space where all the K-12 information is, so that we can keep those outside forces out.
Yeah. I really thought I should have brought him on, but I thought it might interfere with his schedule. But I love that. This is definitely a conversation worth continuing for sure. What about you, Susie?
I'm staying. I went down with Vine. I'll go down with Twitter. I feel like I'm not there to serve Twitter. Twitter's there to serve me. And right now it's serving my needs differently than it did when it first started. But like Andrea said, I'm different too. It's been a long time since I've been there. And when I started, my whole career has changed. So it's working for me. I know that there's still things in the periphery that I don't agree with, whether it's political or pornography, whatever it is, it's out there and it's on Twitter. So I'll stay there, but that's not where I'm going to put my big effort into anymore for connecting and improving my practice. That'll be
for real. Well, I want to say thank you all so much for joining us. Dr. Sarah, thank you for joining us virtually as well with your comments. Laura, Dr. Harvey, we appreciate that you were tuning in and kept up with our conversation. It means so much for us to have this conversation and to really reevaluate why our social media presence is important to us and what our purpose is. So thank you all so much for sharing. And if nothing, we have alternatives. And like you guys said, we're changing and we're evolving, and so is our social media presence. So this is been such a wonderful time. Thank you for taking time out of your day to share with us. Any last words before we say goodbye?
No, just thanks everybody for joining in. And this was like a great day to have this, especially with the news coming out today to see what's going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see what happens over the weekend, and especially even like some of the chats, like if you are constantly like in a Monday chat, that if people start to like disappear from that chat, to see what the response is as far as educators go. So we'll see what happens.
For sure. Everybody have a safe and wonderful weekend, and we'll see you again next week for Thrive O'Clock. We appreciate you being part of the conversation. Have a good one.